Before you start, exercise caution. You should always speak with your doctor before you start, stop, or change any part of your healthcare plan, including physical activity, exercise, or therapy. This video cannot and does not contain healthcare advice. It is for general informational and educational purposes only. Use of WhisperSLYDE is solely at your own risk.
This is standing, soft knees, hip abduction on the right. You can do 10 reps. The knees are not fully extended. Standing, soft knees, abduction, forward. Notice how the support foot is in front of the device and pushing out. Repeat this 10 times. Abduction, squat, forward. Notice how the support leg is bent probably to about 70 degrees, and she's pushing out to the side. She's going to repeat this 10 times. So standing, hip adduction, standing in front, knees are slightly bent, and she's pulling her leg in towards the middle, repeating 10 times. Diagonal hip extension and abduction. She's standing 45 degrees to the central plane, pushing backwards and out to the side. She's going to repeat this 10 times. Knees are slightly bent. Hip extension, diagonals with the trunk flexed to 40 degrees. Stable leg is slightly bent. She's pushing backwards and out with the trunk flexed, meaning she's going to bring in her lower gluteals more. Repeat. Downward dog. She has both feet on the slider. Core is engaged. She's going to repeat this 10 times. Standing, soft knees, central hip extension. So notice how the support foot is in the middle, pushing back, requiring some core. She's going to repeat this 10 times. Hip extension with a narrow base. Notice the support foot is on the ground beside the WhisperSLYDE. She's pushing back, standing erect, and going to repeat 10 times. Hip extension, central flexed. Notice how the trunk is flexed to bring more of the gluteals in. Her support foot is in the center, and she's going to repeat this 10 times. Hip extension with the narrow base and the trunk flexed for more gluteals. She's pushing back, knee is slightly bent, and she's going to repeat this 10 times. Standing hip flexion. Notice her stable foot is halfway down the slide, and she's pulling the slide towards her using her hip flexors. The stability required in her left hip. As she does it, she's going to repeat this 10 times. Kneeling hip adduction. Notice how she's kneeling on a soft pad and bringing the leg across. She's going to repeat this 10 times. Kneeling hip flexion. Notice how she's kneeling on the soft pad on the left, halfway up the slide, WhisperSLYDE, and then her right leg is pulling forward for hip flexion. Sitting, lateral rotation to the right hip. The idea is that the foot comes across and the upper leg rotates without the knee moving too much across. And repeat this 10 times. Sitting, medial rotation of the right hip. And the idea is to rotate the foot out so the thigh is rotating in, and that's why she's holding her knee to try and minimize the side movement of the knee. You may need the WhisperSLYDE fixated on that right side, the left of the screen, to stop it sliding. Supine bridging comes up, core is engaged, transverse, and she's going to repeat this 10 times. Upper body cross body series, pushing with the left hand, pulling with the right, going back, pushing with the left, pulling with the right, pushing with the left, pulling with the right. Upper body, we're doing lateral push-outs, which involve lateral rotation and abduction of the left shoulder. Notice how the WhisperSLYDE is fixated at the end of the treatment table. A cross-body pull, coming across. Notice how the end of the WhisperSLYDE is fixated here on the bed with the manual therapy belt, and just pulling across. Upper body pullbacks, using the core to counter the trunk torsion. She's pulling back, and repeat 10 times. Upper body pushbacks, using core to stabilize. She's going to repeat this 10 times. Upper body push out, she's standing to the side of the WhisperSLYDE, pushing out as far as she can. There. She's going to repeat 10 times. Dynamic downward dog. So core is stabilized, neutral position, coming up, resisting, going out the wall used for stabilization. Standing hamstrings, the heel is on the buffer on the train, the foot is behind or further back on the train, making the hamstrings work. So we're doing back hip pull-ins. Notice the wall is stabilizing, the train is going across, the knees are slightly bent. This is front hip pull-in. So it's using the wall as stabilization, the foot is in front, the knees are slightly bent. Central hip pushback, so the knees are slightly bent, the toes are up on the buffer, the foot is standing in the middle, the pelvis stays relatively still. This is diagonal hip push out, so notice the foot is to the side of the head, there's a slight angle, so they're pushing into extension and out to the side. Narrow glute pushback, so the trunk is forward at 40 degrees, the foot is standing to the side of the head, forefoot pushing back on the train, knees slightly bent, and the pelvis remains relatively still. This is narrow hip pushback, so the foot is standing slightly to the side of the head, forefoot is on the buffer, hips are remaining relatively still, pushing back. This is back hip push out. Notice the foot is back, the knees are slightly bent, the pelvis is not moving, and the right leg is just pushing out to the side. This is central hip push out, so the knees are slightly bent, the stabilizing foot is on the head of the board, and we're just pushing out and keeping the pelvis stable. This is forward hip push out, so notice how the foot is further forward of the head of the slide, but it's using the wall as a stabilizer. Again, the hips remain stable as she's pushing the right leg out. This is hip sideways center, so the stabilizing foot is on the headboard, the hips don't move, and the knees are slightly bent. Sitting hip lateral rotation, the WhisperSLYDE is held against the wall. The idea is to have the thigh not move too much and just rotate, and the ankle is coming in. There's some adduction here as well. This is sitting hip internal rotation. The idea is that the knee doesn't travel too far to the side and the top part of your thigh is just rotating as the ankle goes out to the side. Sitting hamstring curls. This requires the WhisperSLYDE to be fixated to a table chair or something so it won't slide back. Here we are using a belt around the table, and now we can pull back using hamstrings. Sitting knee extension, notice the chair is in the hole for stabilization and the heel is on the buffer pushing out into knee extension. This is single shoulder rotation, outward rotation, external rotation. Notice how it is stopped on the end of the table. This is single shoulder internal rotation. This is single shoulder pullbacks. Notice how she's standing to the side. This is standing table triceps. This is double shoulder push-outs. This could be done in standing, or there's no reason why it couldn't be done in sitting. Single shoulder push-outs. Standing trunk flexion, so both feet are on. The back of the board is stabilized by the steel, so there needs to be some stabilization there. And then the hands obviously are stabilizing, and this requires a lot of trunk control.